Do you want to play piano chords like Bill Evans? Well, there's one type of chord that Bill Evans is famous for using all of the time, and they're called rootless voicings. In today's lesson, I'm going to walk you through everything that you need to know to get started playing rootless voicings. You're going to learn what they are, why you should use them, the three primary types, how to use them on different types of chords, the best range for rootless voicings, my top rootless voicings exercise, and how to apply them to the classic jazz standard Autumn Leaves. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, first I want to play some rootless voicings so you can get the sound in your ear, and then I'm going to walk you through the lesson. Those chords in my left hand are the rootless voicing chords, and so that's what you're going to learn in this lesson. So what is a rootless voicing chord? Well, it's a chord that does not contain the root. So if you have a chord like a C major 7 and you remove the root and you just played these three notes, this would be a rootless voicing. Now you might be thinking, Johnny, why would you remove the root from your chords? Well, there are three reasons. First, it avoids doubling the root with the bass line, which usually does not sound very good. Two, it frees up your fingers to add additional beautiful notes to your chord. And three, it creates beautiful voice leading in your chord progressions. And I'll show you exactly what I mean in just a little bit. But before we do that, if you're enjoying this lesson, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more videos just like this. Next, I'm going to demonstrate these three reasons so you really understand why rootless voicings are important to use in your playing, and then I'm going to show you the three primary types of rootless voicings. So first, let's say you have a C major 7 chord and you have a bass line, okay? Now, you could play the root in your right hand, but it sounds a lot better to remove the root. So listen to how it sounds without the root in the right hand. Okay, now here it is with the root. I'm going to put it on the top. So it sounds a little better to remove the root. It really locks in better with the bass. Then try to add the root, you're going to double the bass. And generally speaking, you want to avoid doubling notes with the bass. It won't sound as good compared to adding additional notes on top of the bass. Reason two is that you can add more chord colors when you free up a note in your left hand. So if you take your C major 7 chord, you remove the root, well guess what? Now you have a fourth finger that you can add an additional note. In a sense, you're substituting the root with a different note, which is going to add a beautiful additional color to your chords. Reason three to use rootless voicings is that you get better voice leading between your chords. And voice leading is basically when your chords feel like they're very connected to one another. So when you play a progression like the 2, 5, 1, instead of jumping to each of your chords, your rootless voicings feel a little more connected. Listen to each of the voices in this chord. Ba-dum. And then from here it goes down. So we have ba-dum, ba-dum, and then the top note, ba-dum. All right, now that you know why you should use rootless voicings in your playing, next let's talk about the three primary types of rootless voicing chords. First, you have chord shells. These are 2-note chords where you take your full chord, you remove the root and the fifth, and you have a rootless voicing chord in your right hand. And this is a great way to get started playing rootless voicings if you're more of a beginner pianist. Second are what are called 4-note closed voicings, and they have this sound. For this voicing, we're playing a C major 7 chord, but we're removing the root, so it's a rootless voicing, but we're adding a D, which is the 9th of the chord. And so this is more of an intermediate approach to playing rootless voicings. Finally, you have what are called quartal voicings, which sound like this. Okay, this is a very jazzy way of playing a C major 6 chord. It's kind of like a C major 7 chord, but it's like a substitute. But for this chord, we're removing the root, and then we're spreading out the notes of our C6. So we have E, A, and G, and then in the middle, I'm adding that D. So this is a rootless voicing chord. Now notice with these rootless voicing chords that I am adding the root before I play a lot of these rootless voicing chords. So when you play these chords, it's assumed that there is some type of bass line underneath the chord. You might be playing with a real bass player who's walking a bass line, or you might jump from the root to the rootless voicing, or you could play the rootless voicing in your right hand with a bass line. Now, even though these 3 types of chords that I just taught you are technically rootless voicing chords, the term rootless voicing usually applies to these 4-note closed voicings. And these are the voicings that Bill Evans used in his playing. So these 4-note chords will be the focus of this lesson. Now, there are 4 situations where you would typically use rootless voicings in your playing. First, let's say you're accompanying a singer on a tune like Autumn Leaves. You can use rootless voicings in your right hand while you walk a bass line. The autumn leaves drift by my window, the autumn leaves of red and gold. Second, if you're playing Autumn Leaves solo piano and you want to jump from your root to your chord, you can use this in your left hand while you play the melody in your right hand. Third, if you were playing Autumn Leaves with a bass player and you're playing the melody in your right hand, you can use these rootless voicings to accompany in your left hand. Fourth, if you were soloing on Autumn Leaves and you were playing with a bass player, you could also use these rootless voicings in your left hand while you're improvising your solo. All right, next, I'm going to show you how you can play rootless voicings on the 3 most common chord types that you'll see in jazz tunes. First is major 7 chords. You're going to see a lot of these chords in jazz standards. So how do you play a rootless voicing on this chord? Well, you get rid of your root, you're going to switch your fingers to play the lower notes of the chord, and you're going to add a D to this chord, and now you have a beautiful rootless voicing on your C major 7 chord. Now this D is called the 9th of the chord, and it's a chord extension that you can add to your chords to make them sound really beautiful. And the quick way to figuring out this note is to go up a 3rd interval from the 7th, and you have your D. You could also think of this as an E minor 7 chord played over your C. Now this is what's called an A voicing because you have the 3rd of the chord on the bottom. But guess what? You can play another version of this chord where you put the 7th on the bottom, and so we call this one the B voicing. So we have A voicing, B voicing. By the way, it's common to substitute major 7 chords for major 6 chords. So a common way to play the A voicing is like this, and the B voicing you could play like this. All right, the second very common chord you'll see in jazz tunes is a minor 7 chord. So the way you play a rootless voicing on this chord is you get rid of your root, you play these notes with the bottom fingers, and you add the 9, which is the D, and you have now your beautiful rootless voicing, which is an A voicing. The trick to figuring out this chord is you can actually think of it as an E flat major 7 over a C. You can also play a B voicing of this chord by putting the 7th on the bottom, and now you have a beautiful C minor 9. The third chord you'll see a ton of in jazz tunes is what's called a dominant 7 chord. So the way to play this as a rootless voicing is you get rid of the root, you put the 9 on the top, but you have one more transformation. For these dominant chords, it's very common to substitute the G with an A. And this is called the 13 of the chord. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. And so on a dominant chord, if you want to play a rootless voicing, you'll typically play it like this. And this is called a C13 chord, but you can use it when you see a 7th chord, which is a dominant chord. Now, just like the other rootless voicings, you have an A voicing and a B voicing. The B voicing has the 7th on the bottom. All right, next, let's talk about the best range of the piano to play your rootless voicing chords. Because rootless voicing chords do not sound good low on the piano, and they also don't sound very good high. Rootless voicings will sound best in the mid-range of the piano, and it's ideal to play them between a C3 and a C5. So anywhere in this range, the rootless voicings are going to sound really good. All right, next I'm going to show you my top rootless voicings exercise. But before we do this, if you want to do a deep dive on rootless voicings and confidently use them in your playing, check out our Level 6 Foundations learning track. In this learning track, you will learn everything that you need to know about rootless voicing chords. We'll do a deep dive on how to use rootless voicings on each of the most common chords in jazz. You'll learn how to apply each of these chords to tunes. We'll go through essential exercises, mastering rootless voicings over the most common chord progressions in jazz, and you'll learn how to use rootless voicings in lead sheets. So I'll put a link to that below. All right, next I'm going to show you what I think is the top rootless voicings exercise, and this will really help you get rootless voicings in your fingers. And the exercise is very simple. Basically, we're going to play the 2-5-1 chord progression. This is the most common progression in jazz, but we're going to use rootless voicings on these chords. So a quick review of the 2-5-1. If you're in the key of C, the 2 chord is a D minor 7, the 5 chord is a G7, and the 1 chord is a C major 7. So you can play this progression with rootless voicings, and it sounds beautiful. So the first rootless voicing is our D minor 7 chord. There's the 3rd, 5th, and 7th, and there's no root in the right hand, and we're going to play the 9th instead. The 5 chord, the G chord, we're going to play it like this. This is that rootless voicing G7 chord, and if you recall earlier, the rootless voicing, we had the 3rd on the bottom, the 13, the 7, and the 9. So this voicing is a B voicing, okay? And finally on the C chord, we play it like this. We have the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, and the 9th. So we have a 2, this uses the A voicing, the 5, this has the B voicing, and then the 1 has the A voicing. And what you're going to do is you're going to cycle through 6 different keys using this 2-5-1 exercise. So once you get to the C chord, we're going to turn the C chord into a 2 chord. So now we're going to turn the C into a C minor 7 and do a 2, 5, 1 in the key of B flat. So C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7, except you're going to use rootless voicings. So on the 2 chord, there's the rootless voicing, it has the 9. There's our 5 chord, this is now an F13 chord, and then the 1 chord looks like this. Now notice the little pattern in between my chords. When I go from the 2 chord to the 5 chord, I just move this note down to get to my 5 chord. This is what I was talking about earlier about good voice leading. And this occurs because these chords share a lot of the same tones, okay? And then from this chord, we're gonna drop this one down, this one will stay, and this one drops down. Now for the exercise, what's going to happen is that you'll end up cycling through 6 different keys. So we have 2, 5, 1 in C, and then 2, 5, 1 in B flat, 2, 5, 1 in A flat, 2, 5, 1 in G flat, 2, 5, 1 in E, and then finally 2, 5, 1 in D, and now you're basically back to where you started. But there are still 6 more keys to practice. So you're going to go back and this time do a 2, 5, 1 in D flat. So you have 2, 5, 1 in D flat, 2, 5, 1 in B, 2, 5, 1 in A, 2-5-1 in G, 2-5-1 in F, and finally 2-5-1 in E flat. All right, let's go ahead and play the full exercise with the included backing track, and here it is. Here we go. 2-5-1, 2-5-1. We're going to A flat now, G flat, E, and D. Now we switch to E flat. That's to D flat, to B, to A. This is to G. This is to F. And finally, to E flat. By the way, this lesson comes with 3 downloadable backing tracks at different tempos. You can also download and print the lesson sheet music, and you can change the key of this entire lesson with the click of one button with our smart sheet music. So I'll put a link to all of that below. Now, I want to mention that you could flip this exercise by starting on a B voicing instead of an A voicing. So on your 2-5-1 in C, on the 2 chord D, you could start on your B voicing where the 7th's on the bottom. On the G chord, this is an A voicing where your 3rd is on the bottom. And then on the 1 chord, you have your B voicing where the 7th is on the bottom. I also want to mention that there are 4 common ways to alter your 5 chord. So on the 2-5, this chord, you could play like this. Okay, basically I'm taking that 5 chord and I'm doing a flat 9, and in this chord I actually am using the 5. Okay, so this is a common way of playing your 5 chord. You could also play it like this. Okay, for this one, it's like a G13, but I'm using the flat 9. Okay, so you can do the 5 or the 13 in the right hand. You could also play it like this. Okay, so we have 2, 5. This has the flat 9, but it also has a flat 13. Okay, and then finally, the crunchiest one. Okay, for this one, I'm using a sharp 9 and a flat 13. Finally, I want to show you how to apply these rootless voicings to the classic jazz tune Autumn Leaves. First chord, A minor 7, you can use a B voicing like this. Next chord, D7, let's use an A voicing. Next, the G chord, let's use a B voicing. And next chord, C major 7, let's use an A voicing. Next, F sharp minor 7 flat 5. We haven't talked about this chord, but for this chord, I don't add any notes to the chord. So you're going to play the simple chord like this, and then on the B7 chord, ooh, very pretty. This is that A voicing with the 3rd on the bottom. E minor, we'll put the 7th on the bottom. It's a B voicing. And finally, I like to use an E7, and we're going to do an altered voicing. Super crunchy. And here it is with the melody. The last thing I want to say is that when you see a lead sheet for a tune like Autumn Leaves, typically when they show the chords, they'll show the basic 7th chord. They won't say play a 9th chord or a 13th chord. And so it's up to you as a jazz pianist to decide which notes you want to add to these 7th chords to color them up. And so these rootless voicings are a great way to do that. Hey, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the lesson, please let me know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out pianowithjonny.com. We have over 1,000 step-by-step lessons for all playing levels where you learn your favorite songs, styles, and how to improvise at the piano. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.